Good evening, everyone. It's Jeremy from Trading Safely. Welcome from wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is. Right now, I'm in Port Stephens, Australia. It is 5:20 in the afternoon. Beautiful day. Been at the beach, just relaxing. Been looking at the markets. A lot of stuff to cover tonight. We're going to be about 45 minutes. If you are interested in taking out our 30-day trial, we're going to put up a link at the end of the webinar. In the 30-day trial, you basically get access to our software, you get access to our signals, and you get access to Sean and I through our online Facebook private group that gets excuse me, everyone. And you get access to our online Facebook community portal where we cover global markets in real time, 24 hours a day. Sean's in the UK, in Australia, so we can cover all time frames. Tonight it's just me presenting. I had a couple of issues with the webinar service, so it's just me, and Sean will continue to provide all the invaluable insights during the week. Just a little bit about Sean. Sean's worked in markets for over 37 years, I think it is. He's won Technical Analysis Book of the Year in 2014. He's self-published a couple of books. He's traded for a very, very long time. He was and is still a mentor to me. I've been with Sean for about 4 to 5 years now. Thoroughly enjoy working with him. He's a very creative man. And myself, I've been in trading for about 15 years now, with a focus on energy markets, but certainly actively trading global. I've come up with some really clever software that looks at multiple time frames, and that's very unique from what I've seen, at least anyway. And that is something that you will pick up on over time. Our use of multiple time frames is very, very powerful because it gives us, and it's like an MRI or a cross section, if you like, into a market at any point in time. Unless you can do that, it becomes very difficult to trade. So what we do is, there's a couple of levels of service that we offer. One is at the very basic level, you can join our online Facebook group. It's a private group. We do give global market updates to act on those out of their own decisions, or you can subscribe, become a client, in which case you receive the software and access to signals that we think are, in our opinion, are valuable. So tonight, I really encourage you to have a think about joining us if you haven't already. It is typically an open forum, so if you do want to communicate with us, just jump on the email and send us any questions that you might have. But tonight we'll cover all the global markets. First of all, however, it is important I do okay, so if you wouldn't mind just casting a bit of a summary of this one. Look, the highlight was probably this unexpected Syrian bombing that came out on Thursday. What was this? Bond markets didn't really react. In fact, they gave sell signals on Friday. Bond markets are in downtrends. Last quarter they took the lower quarterly bearish level, have been in a sideways pattern, have tested support, and now more recently tested resistance in quarterly downtrends, and have given self signals at resistance again. So there are a few. If I join the dots, I'm starting to think that US dollar again appears to be consolidating, possibly bottoming out. Hasn't given us the upper weekly bullish level. He's moving higher. They gave long-term buy signals at the end of last comeback and retested quarterly support. And now, despite the fact that we're in sort of a short-term downtrend at the weekly level only, it's fair to say that the yearly, annual, and quarterly uptrends are still well in place. To my mind, it feels like not far away from moving higher again. But we do need to close above the upper weekly bullish level to confirm that. But we have held the retest of the major quarterly upper pivot. We'll get to that in due course. So, metals, gold sort of popped higher after the bottom, failed to take out the weekly bullish levels. So, to my mind, gold's still short-term weakness. It does appear to be rotating on a longer-term basis. And we mentioned that last week in the webinar where we said, obviously we'll go, gold's taking out the upper quarterly level, so it'll be rotating, but it has failed at the monthly levels. And now, even in the face of a bit of walling again to take out upper bullish pivot, can't go up, must go down, even though I suspect longer-term gold is starting to turn. So without further ado, I might just, I'm going to jump into market straight away. If I just cast my eye over the quote board, the really standard, equity sideways, were neither bullish nor bearish, but they did avoid. They avoided. That is a clear message of, in the face of what happened in Syria, equity markets have held up. And the other one is the sell signals coming through on US bonds. There are downtrends. Another interesting thing is the dollar index is picking up strength again. It is on long-term. It is in an annual uptrend, and we have back tested quarterly, and now we look to be reverting back to the main trend. Certainly in the last couple of weeks, dollar index has taken out two bullish levels, and US dollar pairs are showing weak against that. In particular, the euro and the Aussie were definitely weaker this week. Looking for levels on the euro on the futures around 104.8 on 9. So certainly a weekly close under that. I think it opens the door for a car crash. Aussie dollars tried a few times to get through that sort of 77.25 level, which is like an annual upper pivot, and has failed. Taking out bullish quarterly levels on close. So I suspect, a bit like gold, maybe there might be some rotation going on where on a longer term basis, maybe the Aussie's starting to firm up alongside gold, but that you can't rule out a short term spike at the moment, because a lot can happen in a quarter, that is for sure. Energy markets were bullish. We've been following oil for a long time. Everyone knows that we've been bullish oil despite the recent correction. Last year oil and that gas put on annual buy signals, and it's important to an annual buy signal. Then the market has to become overbought in the short term, right? So that's exactly what's happened. The short term pullbacks in oil and that gas have been reversing, and we are rejoining the annual trends that are in place, and we have had some pretty decent moves in oil and nat gas. And we've been pointing this out to our subscribers and to our clients along the way. Bond markets, US bonds are down. Have struggled at monthly and weekly levels for the past couple of months. So the advice there is down, and I might just start hopping through markets. So let's start with the Dow. This is Dow Jones Cash Index. That is the test of. So for anyone new, enable us to assess what the market does across different time frames. So the yellow is weekly, the pink is monthly, the quarterly is brown, the semi-annual is blue, and the yearly is orange. In this instance, you can't see the yearly. And so the logic is pretty simple. When we close above, you think about it like a ladder, right? So we close above the upper pivot, then the market wants to go up. We close in the middle, and the market's neutral. We close underneath, then the market wants to go down. Now, that's true in every time frame, and so when we assess, it's a pretty good indication of what the market's likely to do, in our opinion. The Dow, the end of 2016, we closed up here, so we closed above these upper pivots. It's bullish. Last quarter, March quarter, we closed that again, and close above these levels if they are weak. So we've tested that upper pivot this ago. We've held. The market's just consolidating. It's in a short-term clear downtrend, but that downtrend is also weakening because we have the lower weekly pivots on close, which to my mind suggests that perhaps Nasdaq are looking to move higher. But we'll never tell the market what to do. First things first, wait for the weekly close above the upper weekly pivot that'll get generated on Monday. If that happens, looking to add to long positions there. If I call it the S&P 500 futures, it's going to tell a similar story. It'll be probably a couple of weeks as the market's tried to test some of the slightly higher time, and here we go again, trying to test this upper quarter, and just couldn't even get near it. And on this here, okay, it didn't close over it, closing under these weekly pivots either. So the high time frame is still up. So you shouldn't be short equities. There's no reason on a long-term basis. Look at these monthly lower pivots. We're not getting anywhere near them. The market is strong, so do not try and sell it. At least you would at least need a monthly close under a monthly lower pivot, in my opinion, to even contemplate getting short equity indexes. So until that happens, you should be looking to buy. And that's a pretty clear message. Interesting. That had a very bullish close in the last quarter. It took out the double bullish, and that's quite level at the same level. So, I'm just calling it up now, but you'll see here how this quarterly level and pink level and brown are pretty much identical, and we closed the quarter up here, which is above. So we had a couple of pokes at the top, and now it closed above. While the American indexes have been selling off, the Aussie index has been consolidating. When I look at the relationship between these different times, it's very well organised. Room across time, and by that I mean the weekly pivots are inside monthly's inside quarterly's inside yearly. That means the market is unconstrained and is free to move higher on a time basis. Just needs price now to confirm the move higher. So next week we'll really be looking for a close above the weekly upper pivot when it gets generated on Monday. So no reason to be short Australian equities. They look like they're going higher. And until you get some evidence to the contrary, then you just stick with the trend. Like if I look back here, that's the upper monthly pivot there. That was a couple of months back. Closed above it. Then we've got nowhere near those lower pivots, and in fact, last month we've now closed. You've got basically 2 buy signals in the last, in the last quarter and a bit. Might do oil markets. We mentioned oil gave annual last year, and I'll just go and show you that. What I mean by that. Okay, so that there is the upper annual pivot. The low is all the way down here, and we closed here. So that's a quarterly buy signal there and an annual buy signal here. And the market has just been consolidating. It's tried to test, this lower quarterly pivot. End of last month, it couldn't even close below the lower bearish pivot. So that tells you the market's strong. We had a buy signal last week when we closed above this upper weekly pivot in yellow there. We now have another buy signal this week because we've closed above this upper weekly pivot there. In terms of targets for oil, there's a main one, 53.84, which is last year's close. If I just turn on some of this closing information, you'll see it pop up. Okay, so this white line, we did an awful lot of work around last year's close. So to my mind now, when we get the 2 new yellow pivots for the week ahead, one of them's going to be above this annual close. So I think if we were to annual close next week and above 53.84 on a weekly closing basis, it's really opening up a lot of space for add-in support in terms of peaks. So we've got a level here around 55, and then hitting up to $60. Then there's just nothing. So look for continuation in the uptrend of oil. This suggests that there's weakness in oil at this stage. If you had entered from this weekly close, then stop should have been a weekly close under the lower pivot. And certainly in the week ahead, when we get new weekly pivots, and your stop should be closed under the new lower weekly pivot for the week ahead. So oil looks bullish. Nat gas is a pretty epic big run up. Gave it advice. If I just go to that. Okay, yeah, there's the upper yearly pivot. We closed up here. Market was overbought and listed all the way back down to this semi-annual pivot zone down here. And now, right at the end of the quarter, lower bearish pivot, telling you that the uptrend in nat gas is alive and in the short term, it looks susceptible for a rep because it's been unable to take out these upper pivots the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying it can't continue to go higher, but typically when you see that a couple of weeks in a row, you've got to be on guard for a short-term pullback into a rising trend. So no reason to be short nat gas. The long-term trend is up there as well. Moving on to currencies. Dollar index is rejoining its longer-term trend. It still has yearly trends in place, uptrends in place. At the end of 2016, it failed to close above the upper yearly pivot, but that doesn't mean it's bearish. It just means it's going to a consolidation phase. And that's exactly what's happened. We have had a consolidation in the dollar index. Okay, so here's what I mean. There's the upper annual pivot at the end of 2016. We failed to close above it, but we were the previous year, I believe, where we did take out the upper annual pivot. So the long-term annual trend is up on dollar index. At the same time, we took out semi-annual pivots. So there is a semi-annual and an annual trend in place. We have tested lower on the dollar index, and now you'll notice that even in Feb, we closed through the level, and then in March, we were unable to take out the lower bearish monthly level. So it's pretty clear. We're bullish on the monthly level, we're bullish on the yearly level, and now you've had signal here and then buy a signal here. So dollar index is strong, which will mean correspondingly that you're going to see weakness in the euro, the Aussie, the pound, and all the pairs. And that's exactly what's been happening. In terms of target levels for dollar index, you've got one here. Obviously, this quarterly level is quite strong, 102, 859. And if I put in some of the peaks to give you a sense, there's a level here at 105, and then you're talking about all the way up to 108, folks. So looking for dollar index to really start ripping and letting the higher time take over. So looking for US dollar strength and obviously weakness in the pairs. So I'll give you a bit of an example. If we look at the euro been desperately trying to avoid closing under 104.9. Now in the spot, that level is 104.6. In the futures, it's around 104.9. We came all the way back up, tested this major resistance area that we mentioned over and over, around 109. It's failed badly. In multiple time frame downtrends. We're in a yearly downtrend, we're in a quarterly downtrend. The market has been consolidating, but the last couple of months now, we haven't been able to take out this upper monthly bullish pivot, and we failed to close above pivot, which is the brown level. So that is why the market is the higher time frames. Frame downtrends are still there. Looking for on the spot close under this low, really, to really trigger a major collapse in the euro. What else? Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar got pretty oversold, at the recent low. On a short-term basis, like at the monthly level, okay, so the monthly pivot moved outside, so the lower monthly pivot moved outside. That generated some energy up to retest the upper annual pivot, because for the Aussie has been going down for quite some, as people would be aware. Say at the end of 2015, you can see the upper annual pivot there, the lower annual pivot there, and we closed under it. So the Aussie dollar definitely has a yearly downtrend in place. All of 2016, we tried to test higher, but at the end of the year, we still closed in the middle of the yearly pivots. And so when you have a neutral year like that, you have to default back to the year before, which is bearish. So Aussie dollar is still bearish on a long basis. There are a few signs showing up. Maybe the Aussie dollar is rotating on a longer term basis, and I say that because we closed above this upper quarterly pivot here in the last quarter. Does not mean that the market can't move a lot lower in the short term. I mean, you only need to here look at that move intra-quarter. It was pretty big. I can do that as well. Short term, it's gone overbought. So this upper quarterly pivot's moved outside the yearly. That means the market can move down. We have taken out the lower weekly pivot, which is a sell signal. We haven't been able to hold this semi-annual level. So looking for the Aussie dollar, there's a known weakness there. Just mindful of term rotation going on. Perhaps in the looking ahead, rates up, and we might see we might see this turning around. But in the short term, we are seeing failure. Look at the month; it's not closing above them. We failed, a couple of months turning down. So looking for a test of support. There's one here at 73, and I think there's some support in the spot also around 71.5, and then a test of the low down at 68.25. So short-term weakness in Aussie dollar, folks. What else are we going to look at now? Let's have a look at gold. So first of all, let's look at gold last. So at the end of the year, we closed because we're in between the two orange pivots. In the short term, we got quite oversold. And I say that because the two pink monthly pivots moved outside the two quarterly pivots, whereas at this stage here, they were inside. So when they're inside, the market's neutral. When they move outside, the market is overextended, and that's what's caused this reactionary move up. But we do have a look at the quarterly bound pivot here and the lowest semi-annual close underneath. So that gave us a bearish long-term bias to gold still. Okay, so gold is above this quarterly pivot, so there is some suggestion that perhaps longer-term gold is starting to rotate around. We would need a call 51 at the end of June to suggest that the semi-annual as well, and we obviously need to close above 1264 at year end to suggest this. In the short term, however, it is a different story, because if I look at the upper pivots, the monthly pivots are pink. See how here, that's where we closed at the end of Feb, so we closed under the pivot, and then again here, end of March pivot. That tells you that the market's not strong. We are at upper annual and semi-annual resistance area, strong resistance zone, and even with the bombing during the week in Syria, we have not been able to take out this upper weekly pivot, and that's gone on for a couple of weeks now. So guys, watch. It has not given you a clear signal at the moment. We're going to get two new weekly pivots on Monday. To my mind, weekly close under the lower pivot will signal short-term weakness and a retest, perhaps of the low, but ultimately looking for significant bounce in gold. But right now, you've not been given any information to act in the short term because we've been unable to take out the upper weekly pivots or the lower weekly pivots. So until then, there's nothing on gold. So I suspect, however, because the monthly levels we're not taking out monthly bullish, so we're listing lower before high. It's a similar story with silver. Moving on to 30-year bonds. They tested resistance. They're definitely in long-term downtrends. So here's the lower quarterly pivot. Here's the lower semi-annual pivot from end of last year. Closed well under it. So we are in a downtrend, and we've been unable to take out monthly pivots on the upside and also the quarterly pivot on the upside. So what can't go up has to go down. We did get daily sell signals on bonds. For me, I'll be looking for a weekly close under the lower weekly pivot that gets generated on Monday. Alternatively, if you do choose to go short now, then your stop will be a weekly close above the weekly upload on Monday. So looking for downside in bonds. I forgot to cover US dollar yen. So quick look at that. That is in a long-term uptrend. So here we closed above the upper annual pivot and semi-annual and quarterly. So long-term buy. Beg your pardon, we closed neutral on a yearly basis. There's the upper pivot here. But I know with the yen I think the year before. Okay, so here we're still in a yearly trend from this close out of the end of 2014. Since then, we haven't been able to close. We've closed neutral effectively each year, so that tells me the uptrend is still in place until it closes negative. So right now, if I look even at that month there, we closed actually above the lower monthly pivot, so that's doesn't want to go down. Now here it didn't close below, and again here, despite the lifting off, out the lower monthly pivot on a closing basis is warning you it doesn't want to go down. So now we've had 2 weeks where we can't take out the lower pivot on a weekly basis. So watching for a move above the weekly upper pivot on close next week, which may coincide with equities going higher and bonds going lower. That's kind of, if I join the dots, it's what I suspect might happen. But for me, I always wait for the weekly close before I in that. In terms of other markets, some of the US dollar pairs are showing strength. The US dollar 7 weeks in a row now. It is in the yearly uptrend. See here, we closed above the upper annual pivot and the quarterly pivot. It wants to go up. It's tested lower. It has not been able to take out the lower monthly pivot for a couple of months now, and then also gave you a weekly buy by closing above the weekly upper pivot, and now another buy signal again. So the long-term trend on the is up, and it's giving you 2 weekly buy. Pullbacks will be in terms of resistance for the current. You've got levels at really. You've got this quarterly pivot here, and then this major level at 9.45. But through there, then we're really heading back to test the upper annual pivot, and then the blue sky. So bullish US dollar SEK. The US dollar Taiwan dollar falls into the same bracket. It's retested annual low, and finally bounced. It's starting to bounce out of there, and just support major supports here. And if I just remove that and look at the pivots only situation now, where the 2 quarterly pivots have moved underneath the lower yearly pivot, so that means it can slingshot, folks. That means it can just go crazy up. Now, to confirm that move up, we need weekly closes to start. Okay, there's one there. So there's your buy signal. The stop next week will be close under the lower. It gets generated on Monday. And look, you may have a couple of false starts, and that's what happens in trading. But this is this is potentially the start of a move higher in the US. So I'm looking at entering from a pullback during the week. And my stop will be a weekly close under the lower weekly pivot. I don't risk very much money when I start trades, no more than 0.5%. You've got to ride out the weekly close, right? You don't want to start off, you don't want to invest a lot of money, just keep it tight and then add to positions once the trend turns. But this is the sort of setup where you get quarterly pivots moving underneath the. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean the market can't go lower. It can. It just means that this is a zone for the market to slingshot higher. And I'm looking to get involved there. It reminds me of the US dollar SEK. It did the same thing, and that's now moving higher. You got the similar setup in the US dollar Singapore dollar. Gave an end buy signals, pull back to retest annual support. And now this quarterly pivot moving on the annual pivot, we're taking out the weekly upper pivot on close. So once again, looking to enter a long on US dollar Singapore dollar. Looking at other markets, I know we're looking at sugar was coming into a. I just want to look at that. Okay, yeah. So sugar actually closed bullish annually last, but got overbought. has had a corrective move lower, has held this major support zone. So in a mini slingshot zone, be looking for a weekly close above the upper weekly pivot next week. Look to enter sugar. Soybeans been sort of falling into the gap. But longer term is moving into an oversized state. It can still drop all this way. So soybeans, for neutral this week. I'm interested to see what happens down here at this 850 zone. Just trying to think what else. I've probably covered most of the markets, folks. I think takeaway for me is these have been choppy, but they've held major trend or weekly close to conditions. It looks like US dollar is regaining strength and the pairs becoming weaker. So looking for breakdowns in the pairs, the strength in the dollar index, energies moving higher. Bonds, I think, may have a short-term top in place, and certainly the long-term trends down. Gold potentially wormed, folks. So it's been struggling at the monthly level and now struggling at the weekly level, quarterly level. So I'm expecting a retest of quarterly support. Perhaps down 1150, maybe even 1,000. But you must get a weekly close first. And the last 2 weeks have given us nothing. It hasn't closed above the upper weekly pivots and hasn't closed below the lower weekly pivots either. So it's been directionless for 2 weeks on a closing basis. So the longer that happens, then the more influence you get from the higher time frames. And the monthlies are also stalling. So I'm kind of thinking they're going to drop at some stage pretty soon, especially since the index is starting to pick up as well. I never want to rely on relations for too long. So I hope all of that helps. I might just flick over to our trading safely. Where is it? Here. So if you come to the home page, right here, there's join our private Inner Circle Facebook group. That's where you can get on board there. There's a site called My Trading Buddy, where you've got a trial. If you want to join the 30-day free trial, there's a link that's going up. So please click on the link. I'm not sure if that link has been put in. Let me have a look. Yeah, I can't see the link there yet. Okay, we're going to put in the link for the 30-day free trial, guys. So make sure you get on that. It's invaluable. Like I said, there's Sister Sean Ryan is offering us signals and 24 updates on global markets. I think that's it for me, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities ahead, particularly in dollar and hopefully bonds, to see if equities can rejoin the party. So look forward to chatting to you next week, folks. Over and out from Jeremy.